I was getting older, of course, and life wasn't the same as it used to be. My days were quieter, filled with the little pleasures I'd grown to cherish: tea in the morning, the smell of fresh flowers from my garden, and the soothing comfort of a hot shower. It was in one of those simple, quiet moments that everything changed. It was a warm afternoon, and the sun was beginning to set, casting a soft golden glow through the curtains. The house was still. I decided to take a long, relaxing shower. I stepped into the bathroom, feeling the familiar warmth of the water as it cascaded over my skin. The sensation of the water washing away the day's weariness was something I'd grown to love. I let the steam rise around me, wrapping me in a cocoon of heat and comfort. My mind wandered, as it often did in these moments. I thought of memories from long ago, of youth, of passion, but I never expected that the quiet reverie of my evening would be interrupted. Suddenly, I heard the door creak open. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but when I turned my head slightly, I realized the door wasn't just cracked open, it was wide open. And there, standing in the doorway, was my cousin and her friend. I hadn't heard them arrive, hadn't even known they were coming over. My heart raced in a way I hadn't felt in years. There was something in the way they looked at me, an intimacy that I hadn't expected. My cousin smiled softly, and her friend stood beside her, their eyes never leaving me. I should have felt embarrassed, standing there in the shower, but I didn't. The warm water continued to pour over me, and the room filled with a hazy mist. I felt their presence surround me, a mix of curiosity and a comforting warmth, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. I stood still, the sound of the water blending with the soft rustle of their movements. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking my video. My cousin stepped closer, her hand grazing the edge of the shower door. "We didn't mean to surprise you like this," she said softly, her voice like a whisper through the steam. Her friend, silent but ever present, took a step forward too, her eyes dark with something unspoken. There was a quiet moment that hung between us, as if time itself had slowed down. My heart thudded in my chest, but not out of fear. It was something else, a stirring, a deep sensation that I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I watched as they moved closer, both of them, until they were standing right by the shower, close enough to feel the warmth of the water on their skin. Their clothes were still on, but I could feel the tension in the air, the way their eyes traced every movement of mine. And then, without a word, my cousin reached out and slowly opened the shower door. The cool air hit my skin, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I met her gaze, holding it, feeling the electricity of the moment course through me. She smiled again, that same soft, knowing smile, and her friend mirrored the expression, their closeness enveloping me. "I think we should join you," my cousin whispered, her voice low, filled with an intimacy that made my breath catch in my as I stood under the warm water. I felt a soothing calm wash over me. My friend's hand on my arm was a reassuring presence, the gentle pressure of her fingers a comforting reminder that I wasn't alone. Her companion moved to stand beside her, and together they stepped into the warm spray, the sound of the water enveloping us in a cozy cocoon of sound. The warmth seeped into my skin, easing the tension from my muscles, and I felt my worries slowly start to unravel. Fully clothed but not caring. The water soaked through their clothes, clinging to their bodies as they moved closer, until there was no space between us. I felt surrounded, enveloped by the warmth of the water and the heat of their bodies. My cousin's fingers traced a line down my arm, her touch gentle yet purposeful. Her friend stood close, her presence a silent, steady force. I felt the water drip down my skin, mingling with the fabric of their soaked clothes. Help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers. Your support is what makes this journey possible, so don't forget to subscribe. It was an intoxicating sensation, being caught between them, feeling the closeness of two people I trusted deeply, two people who, in that moment, seemed to understand the longing I had kept hidden for so long. As the water poured down, my cousin leaned in closer, her voice soft as she said, "You don't have to be alone anymore." The warmth of the steam wrapped around us, and I felt a comforting sense of connection, knowing I had her support. The words hung in the air, soft and inviting. I felt her hand slide down my back, a slow, deliberate movement that made my skin tingle. Her friend, quiet but attentive, moved even closer, her breath warm against my neck. There was something so natural about the moment, as if it had always been leading to this. I had spent years thinking those days of passion, of closeness, were behind me. But here, in this unexpected moment, I realized that desire doesn't fade with age. It lingers, waiting for the right moment to resurface, to remind you of what it means to feel alive. The three of us stood there, the water cascading around us, our bodies pressed close. My cousin's hands explored my skin, her touch light but insistent, as if she had been waiting for this as long as I had. Her friend, still silent but her presence undeniable, reached out, her fingers trailing down my arm, mirroring the movements of my cousin. It was as if they were in sync, their every touch, every movement, orchestrated in perfect harmony. I closed my eyes, allowing myself to relax in the moment, feeling the warmth around me and the soothing sound of the water. There was no rush, no urgency, just the slow, deliberate unfolding of something that had been building for years. It was a feeling of being wanted, of being seen in a way I hadn't been in a long time. Their touch wasn't just physical, it was emotional, connecting me to something deeper, something I had long forgotten. My cousin leaned in again, her lips brushing against my cheek, a soft, lingering kiss that sent a wave of heat through me. Her friend moved closer too, her hands sliding down my sides, her breath warm against my skin. I felt myself surrender to the moment, letting go of the years of solitude, the years of believing that this part of my life was over. For what felt like hours, we stood there, the water pouring over us, their hands exploring every inch of me, their touch filled with tenderness and a passion that I hadn't felt in years. It was slow, deliberate, each moment savored, each touch a reminder that I was still capable of feeling, of wanting, of being desired. The world outside the bathroom seemed to disappear, leaving only the three of us in that intimate, shared space. I didn't know where the moment would lead, and I didn't care. All I knew was that, in that moment, I wasn't alone anymore. The warmth of the water, the heat of their bodies, the closeness of their touch, it was everything I hadn't known I needed. And as the water continued to fall around us, I let myself be swept away by it, surrendering to the moment, to the passion, to the unexpected intimacy that had found me. It lingers, waiting for the right moment to resurface, reminding you of what it means to feel alive. The three of us stood there, the water cascading around us, our bodies pressed close. My cousin's hand gently cupped my face, her thumb tracing my cheek in a way that made me feel cherished. Her eyes met mine, soft but intense, filled with a warmth I hadn't seen in years. She leaned in, her breath warm against my lips, and before I could even process what was happening, we shared a tender moment, soft and searching, filled with a deep connection. I closed my eyes, losing myself in the moment, feeling every emotion that had been buried deep inside me rise to the surface. Her touch was gentle yet insistent, coaxing a response from me that I hadn't allowed myself to feel in so long. As we shared this moment, I felt her friend's hand on my arm, offering silent support and warmth. It was as if they were in sync, their every gesture creating a sense of harmony that enveloped us. My cousin's lips found mine again, and I felt a smile spread across my face as we shared this moment. Her fingers brushed the wet strands of hair from my face, and I could feel the connection between us deepening. Her friend joined in, her hand resting on my shoulder, a comforting presence that made me feel safe and accepted. I let out a soft sigh, my heart swelling with gratitude for this unexpected bond. The three of us were entwined now, our laughter mingling with the sound of the water. My cousin's hands moved gently across my back, exploring with a familiarity that felt both new and long-awaited. I felt her friend's hand on my waist, pulling me closer, creating a sense of unity that made me feel alive in a way I hadn't thought possible. Every moment felt like it was unfolding in slow motion, the warmth of the water mixing with the warmth of our connection. My cousin's eyes sparkled with joy, and her friend smiled at me, their expressions filled with understanding and kindness. "You're beautiful," her friend said softly, and I felt a shiver of appreciation run through me. As we stood together, the world outside the shower faded away, leaving just the three of us, lost in the intimacy of the moment. My cousin smiled at me, her eyes filled with a quiet intensity. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered, echoing the words she had spoken earlier. Her friend nodded in agreement, and in that moment, I knew they were right. I had found something unexpected and beautiful, a connection that made me feel truly alive. Finally, I leaned in and hugged my cousin again, this time slower, savoring the warmth of the moment. Her arms wrapped around me, and I could feel the steady beat of our hearts in sync. We shared gentle hugs, our breaths mingling as we held each other close, wrapped up in the comfort of our newfound bond. The barn felt like it had become our world, the silence around us punctuated only by the gentle sounds of our laughter and whispers. We were wrapped up in each other, the outside world forgotten as we explored this connection, memorizing every curve and every line of our friendship. As we held each other, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. "Whatever happens," I whispered, my voice filled with sincerity, "we'll face it together." My cousin's hand slid lower, her touch gentle but insistent, and I felt a sense of comfort wash over me. Her friend mirrored her movements, their fingers working in tandem as they explored our connection. The warmth between us was almost palpable now, the tension building with every soft touch, every lingering hug. The water continued to pour over us, the steam rising around our entwined bodies, but all I could feel was the warmth of their touch, the way they made me feel alive in a way I hadn't thought possible. I hugged them both, first my cousin, her arms familiar and soft, then her friend, whose hug was filled with an unexpected warmth. We moved together as though we had been doing this for years, our bodies fitting perfectly against each other, every touch sending waves of comfort through me that left me breathless. There was no rush, no urgency, just a slow, deliberate unfolding of connection that felt endless. Every moment was savored, every touch, every hug a reminder of the bond that had long been dormant inside me. My hands moved over their bodies, feeling the warmth of their skin, the comfort radiating from them as they pressed closer, leaving no space between us. I could feel the tension building inside me, the slow, steady rise of comfort that threatened to overwhelm me. My cousin's fingers danced over my skin, teasing, coaxing more out of me with each passing second. Her friend's hands gripped my waist, her presence grounding me as we shared this moment together. The sensations were overwhelming, but I didn't want it to stop. I wanted more, needed more. The water around us seemed to fade into the background as the intensity of the moment took over. My cousin's arms found their way around me again, her embrace deep and consuming as her hands continued their gentle exploration. I felt her friend's warmth beside me, her presence a steady reminder of the bond we were forming. Every touch, every hug, every moment filled with a connection that left me feeling cherished. And then, as if we were all moving together in perfect harmony, the warmth that had been building between us reached its peak. I let out a soft sigh, my heart swelling with joy, and they held me close, their arms wrapped around me as the waves of comfort washed over me. The world outside the barn ceased to exist in that moment. It was just the three of us, lost in each other, in the intimacy of the moment that had brought us together. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, the water still pouring down around us, our breaths mingling as we held each other close. My heart raced, but it wasn't out of fear or hesitation, it was from the sheer intensity of the moment, the realization that I had found something I hadn't even known I was looking for. Finally, my cousin smiled at me, her eyes soft but filled with a quiet intensity. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered, echoing the words she had spoken earlier. Her friend nodded in agreement, her hand still resting on my waist, a silent promise of more to come. And in that moment, I knew they were right. I wasn't alone anymore. I had found something unexpected, something beautiful, something that made me feel alive. She looked up at me with those soft, knowing eyes, her lips curving into a gentle smile. I couldn't resist her, didn't want to. Leaning in, I hugged her again, this time slower, letting the warmth of the moment wash over us. Her arms wrapped around me, and I could feel the steady beat of our hearts still in sync. We shared gentle embraces, our breaths mingling as we held each other close, wrapped up in the comfort of our newfound bond. I moved down, my arms trailing from her shoulders to her back, feeling the way she shivered beneath my touch. Her hands tightened on my arms, her body arching slightly as I held her close, drawing a soft smile from her lips. We were wrapped up in each other, the outside world forgotten as my hands moved over her back, memorizing every curve, every line. She responded to every touch, every hug, her fingers digging gently into my sides as she urged me on, her breath quickening as we stayed wrapped up in each other. Her hands moved to my face, cradling my jaw as she smiled, deep and tender, our connection growing stronger as if we were the only two people in the world. I held her gaze, pouring all the emotions, all the warmth into each moment we shared. Every brush of her hand sent sparks through me, and I could feel her responding with the same intensity. We shifted, her body pressing closer to mine, and I pulled her into a gentle embrace, our connection never breaking. The barn felt timeless, like the moment would never end, and neither of us wanted it to. Our hugs slowed, became softer, more intimate, as we held each other in the fading light. She rested her forehead against mine, her eyes closed, and I pressed one last gentle kiss to her forehead, a promise of everything that had just happened and everything that was to come. She smiled again against my mouth, her breath warm and steady, her lips finding mine again in one last, soft kiss. Together, she whispered back, her voice filled with certainty. And as we sat there, still wrapped up in each other, kissing softly, the world outside felt far away, and all that mattered was the connection between us.